So Jim, you've been talking earlier today about our hopes just a few years ago that we could eliminate polio, but it keeps coming up.
There are parts of the world where we've been unable to eradicate it, and there are two problems. One is we can't get in there to vaccinate people at a high enough density that we need to eradicate it. And the other is the vaccine we've been using can actually evolve back to high virulence. So
it's just a few mutations that make that vaccine, that make that live polio vaccine not nasty, and those can be lost.
Yes. So there are two vaccines historically for polio. The first one introduced was a killed vaccine. It was a shot in the arm. And
got that when I was 9 years old.
In the 50s,
it was a good
yes,
thing.
In the 50s. And that works well at preventing disease. The virus that causes polio is actually a virus of the gut, but the disease comes from when the virus gets out of the gut through the blood and into the central nervous system. The shot in the arm keeps you from getting this infection of the central nervous system.
You still get the infection in the gut.
You can. So the details of this aren't well known. It may be that immunity wanes over time, but yes, when you have a population that's protected only by the inactivated vaccine, that population can actually harbor the virus in the gut. This happened in Israel about 2 years ago. They discovered that there was wild poliovirus in the sewers, which means that people were excreting it from their guts. And
so in some places you could have eliminated the wild type, but because of mutations that happen in the vaccine strain, it pops back up again.
So yes and no. In Israel, the problem was that there were countries where there was wild poliovirus circulating. There were refugees coming into the country and introduced it. But that's to do with the inactivated vaccine. The oral vaccine has the problem that there are 3 serotypes in there, meaning 3 different strains of poliovirus. You need immunity to all 3 to be fully protected. And the vaccine's genetically weakened, but there aren't very many mutations that are weakening the strain. In serotype 2, there's 2 mutations. In serotype 3, there are 3 attenuating mutations. So when people take the vaccine, it goes into their gut, it starts an infection, and the virus starts evolving in their gut to undo these attenuating mutations. And before long, they're excreting completely revertant, or at least partially revertant viruses that can go on to infect other people that aren't immunized.
So this sounds like you've been thinking about strategies for using evolutionary thinking to prevent that kind of reversion to a bad kind of virus.
Well, other people came up with the idea. Olin Q's group at the CDC, Eckhard Wimmer's group in New York, they proposed actually a very clever idea of re-engineering the poliovirus genome so that it's still encoding for the same proteins as the wild type, but genetically it's still weakened because you've made a lot of changes in the triplets, the codons.
But not just 2 or 3, but a bunch of them.
But hundreds of them.
Hundreds of them. So is this being used now?
It's being used on a small scale. So there's so little polio left in the world, we're not really in a position to do clinical trials anymore to study vaccines. But where polio is still circulating, I've been told that they're using one of these new designed viruses in combination with some other vaccines.
Sounds like a fairly potent example of using evolution for a very practical public health problem.
Yes, and it looks like the whole idea for this was designed from first principles. People thought, oh, this should work, and it looks like it does. It looks like it actually greatly retards the evolution of resistance. So if we'd started with this vaccine in the first place, I think a lot of the problems we have from the few remaining areas with endemic polio might be very different.
Let's go on in just a second to talk about evolutionary strategies for controlling mosquito-borne diseases.